Hi, Dr. Nomo Chomo. I'm operating off my backup page channel. Something that's on my mind is gatekeeping, which I mean to my interpretation, or I guess assumedly, gatekeeping is binding people, whereas they are a food supply, if you will. They are a supply. Gatekeeping is keeping and subjecting and preventing people from escaping. And as someone who has experienced this my entire life, what do I have to say? I mean, it sucks. I can't stand it. I can't stand being kept from what I want. I also don't like being subjected to having to settle because there is a consumer base who wants to not only be able to feed off me, but basically they're able to get something they're not worthy of. It's a very insulting feeling. It's very it's disrespectful. And it's difficult when going through this because awareness, if you're aware of it, and I'm aware of it, basically gatekeeping is, I guess you could say, I don't want to call it DS, and by DS, the deep state, I don't want to call it that. I'm going to call it the usual suspects. The usual suspects to me are unqualified candidates who don't deserve to even be here in this planet. I seriously wish that this could be done overnight. It could, but it takes a influence of the mind, and it's not something that I have control over. I can only advise or say my bit and run with it. I have absolutely no control or power over what people choose to do. And unfortunately, because of gatekeeping, I'd say I've been burdened. I try to make do, or to, I suppose you could say, look at the positive, even though it seems like there's no positive. But I suppose the only positive, or some of the positives, would be my privilege or ability to have access to resources or certain elements of things to be able to at least express what I'm going through, what I've experienced, and hope that it can do some good. So gatekeeping, and why I mention it and what's been going on is my entire life, as well as others that have experienced this. Maybe they don't title it as such. Maybe they don't consider it to be gatekeeping, but to me it is. It's like blockading, a barrier, a stumbling block. Now, this ideal that basically says our system, our desire of degeneracy and of keeping certain individuals as a supply to siphon from. And what are they getting? Well, they used to be able to use my body for their own sexual, I guess you could say, sadism or use. This was no good for me, of course. I've experienced a lot of decrepit behavior, interactions, and engagements, of which resulted in me having several abortions since pretty young, my teen years, all the way up to my adult years. This also resulted in me having basically a criminal record, which basically is like a domino effect. Several abortions, criminal record, instability because of this gatekeeping, a whole childhood, teenage years, and majority, if not all, of my adult years subjected to organized adversity and dysfunction, being subjugated to what is considered to be an offense. And this gatekeeping has basically created a dynamic whereas me getting vindication or getting a solution is more and more difficult. Now, why is it difficult? Because it's difficult because, albeit I have tried my best to file report after report, or engaging with the legal system, there's been no absolution. Often offenders are released back into these communities. There's no criminal charges or any prosecution. There's been oftentimes a lot of engagements with law enforcement officers, whereas what seems to be misogyny or some type of indifference to my adversity and the crimes that have been imposed and perpetuated against me. This has made it difficult to trust anyone or anything. On top of that, it basically makes it so my pathology becomes you can't look to anyone for help. Gatekeeping has also intruded itself into my reality through my places of employment as well as my college education. I've experienced DEW, which is directed energy weaponry, illegal surveillance, like I said, stalking, and I oftentimes come to encounter gatekeepers or the associates of them throughout just about any level of major areas in life, whether it's the marketplace, healthcare industry. It doesn't really matter. Everywhere that I've been, there's too many people who work in this society, organization. It's a criminal organized crime. And it's like an octopus. So basically, 30 years of rape, incest, abuse, child abortions, and even having my child stolen from me. My child was stolen from me by a trafficker and immigrant who was deported in 2006. He re-entered into the U.S., whereas I was fleeing from a trafficker from California, and I came here to Minnesota. In Minnesota, I did not have a healthy support system, if at all. I didn't have one. There was no relief to my adversity. When we who are being bound into the confines of a system, underground system, or occult, coven, rogue, or whatever. It's like a system inside of a system. What is seen on the surface level is not really necessarily what's going on. Like for me, for instance, I've never had peace in my life. The only individual that was a good role model, or that I could honestly say, hey, that's my relative, my family, was my grandfather. German man. He was one of the greatest grandfathers that I could have ever had. And I was taken. I was stripped of having a relationship with him. And rather than being able to develop a relationship with the only stable one in that entire fraud of a family, I was sent on a plane to the state of Oregon at about 5 years old. And from 5 years old to about the age of 13, I was ritualistically abused. I was ritualistically abused by an alleged Kojic minister whose father was the pastor of this church. This church was based out of California. So I was sent on a plane, and I never returned back to my maternal side, whereas my grandfather, it's the maternal side, his daughter, the one who birthed me, was, burdened with the assimilation of a very unhealthy, toxic, and domestic violence of a marriage. A lot of people wrongfully assume that spouses cannot experience rape in their so-called marriage, but they do, of course. And my grandfather's daughter, who had birthed me, was subjected to that. All of her children were born out of an illegitimate, narcissistic, toxic, dysfunctional, and falsely created foundation of a marriage. This male, who was a minister of a Kojic church, and his relatives were black, or are black, and they have a lot of generational traumas, criminal conduct, and misogyny, and just very dysfunctional ordeals that have yet to be resolved, if ever. Now, my grandfather's daughter ended up married to this black male who was connected to a church ministry called Kojic, a Church of God in Christ. And these relatives, who basically conjoined with my grandfather's daughter, the one who birthed me, they enacted many offenses towards my grandfather's daughter. Now, it's really not in my place to say what is her part, if she has a part, which I do believe she does, in gatekeeping. But nonetheless, the entire marriage, as well as the conjoining of these two that were able to make someone like me, was already a crime from the beginning. It was already fraud from the beginning, and it was already built on an unstable foundation. I believe because of the unconsequenced and the unchecked, unresolved violations that have been perpetuated on the paternal side. This is the male who domestically abused, violated, raped my grandfather's daughter. And like I said, it's unbeknownst to me when, if, and how, what's her partaking in this gatekeeping, but it is to my knowledge that almost everybody in that conjoining, which created me, have some type of hand or participation in gatekeeping me. It's perhaps because of my ability to see. I can see, and I've been able to see for a long time. I can forgive my grandfather's daughter, but I want no relation or engagements with her. My issue is more so with the paternal side, who allegedly is my father, and he's not. And I can't stress that out enough. He did not protect me. He was not this was not a father. He's, to me, is nothing more than a criminal. I wish that he had been prosecuted. I wish I had never met him. If it had not been for him, my life probably wouldn't look this way. My grandfather was not pleased with his daughter being with this paternal alleged father of mine, and I do not blame my grandfather. If anything, I'm more opposed to the conjoining, but nonetheless, I suppose I wouldn't be here. Nonetheless, I'm here because somebody perpetuated crime, and there's no way around that. Being married to an abuser who beats their spouse, attempts to murder them, rapes them, violates them, forces them to do sexual acts in front of his friends and colleagues, who cheats on his spouse, and then proceeds to alienate his alleged daughter, which I'm not, is a false prophet, as well as the son of a false prophet, son of a false prophet, son of a false prophet, both of them, the pastor and the minister. So the minister, alleged father, pastor, alleged grandfather, and neither one of them do I claim as my actual relatives, even if I have their genetics. They are not my relatives, and I want no parts to do with them. I want for nothing more than for them to be consequenced. I want them to be seen as the criminals that they are. You have it to where the pastor of Kojic Ministry, the Church of God in Christ, that's based out of California, is not only incestuous, he's a fucking pedophile. And then as for the minister, not only is he a degenerative, he's an infidel. Not only is he an infidel, he's okay with allowing his own children to be groomed into being domestically violent, whereas his male sons have become violent offenders of women and girls. They abused me for years, ritualistically abused me for years, incestuous behavior, molestations, stealing money, resources from me, isolating me from the whole entire world and the people in this that inhabit this earth, whereas I'm hindered from creating any real functional and supportive networks or connections with people who may be able to possibly alleviate me from the situation. They've gone on to sabotage just about any healthy relationship that I did have based upon racist motives and perspectives and ideals. The only men that I've ever been attracted to since before I was taught about racial differences. I knew nothing about race or the difference. I didn't care. I was very much colorblind up until about my teen years, so maybe 12, 13 years old. I made it to about 12, 13 years old without ever being infected or imposed with the ideology of race and racial divide. White people did not teach me or subject me to racist antics. I was very much respected and treated well and kindly by the community members. I lived in the suburbs, even though I was being abused there by the paternal side, who's allegedly the father. This is a mixed family, so you have both black and white and whatever. I had not experienced any racism from society, ever. The most racism, violence, and prejudices that I've ever received in my life have never been perpetuated or executed by white Caucasian people. 99.9% of the evils and adversity that I have experienced have came from minorities, both male and female. Now, there might be, and there are some instances where females that are in authoritative positions, as well as females who are an extended family from the paternal side, whereas marriage made them connected to the dynamic of this abuse and these abusers. So that'd be my 0.1%. The wife to the paternal trafficker, abuser, the minister of Kojic, the one who alienated me from my grandfather's daughter. That was realistically the only one. And then when you have it in the institutional, the systemic engagements, of course, 100% of my injustices were imposed by females that were in authoritative positions in the institution. So in the legal realm, 100% of the disrespect and the abuse and misuse of power have came from judges, female judges, as well as sergeants, who were, the leads over cases involving me. And rather than these females in these authoritative positions in the system, rather than them upholding the law or actually listening to what I have to say, let me put a pause there. When I was younger as well, it was always females in these authoritative positions that show up, through the agency and institution, the system. So CPS, was engaged with me when I was younger in my adolescence. Several of my teachers tried to intervene on my behalf, social workers from school. So it's not like there weren't adults who were concerned. There was neighbors who were concerned, and every single last one of them were white people in the society. As a matter of fact, the only times that anyone ever did anything on my behalf or tried to resolve any of the adversity that I was experiencing was always white people. Always. Both genders, male and female. So basically you have it to where it's females, majority females in positions of power who have done a very disgraceful, but I suppose you could say impressionable job at gatekeeping. They've been very persistent in gatekeeping. And the reasons why are they gatekeeping? And why are they against me? Perhaps because they don't want to change. Perhaps because if I were to actually be with a man that I want to be with, that in which the man that I would want to be with would never be a minority male. So therefore, these females that are power hungry and thirsty have infiltrated or made it to be in these systems and being authoritative in these authoritative positions: judges, court magistrates, prosecutors, attorneys, CPS social workers, probation officers. Females, 100% of them females, have opposed me or played both sides. They've played this, oh, I'm so sorry, but let me help these abusers get away with it. Let me help these traffickers traffic you. Let me help this rapist rape you. 100% of the time. Now, in this planet, what I've seen and heard is how terrible white men are, which is very annoying. I not only am I attracted to white men, they are the only ones who I've ever felt like made any sense. I have yet to have seen a minority group of men do what white men do. And I literally mean that. I have never seen anyone operate as effectively as white men have. On top of that, I've never been so badgered and so mistreated and so disrespected, nor have I witnessed white men being racist to anybody. 99.9% of the time, if a minority male or female ends up dead or ends up, I suppose, experiencing some assumed or perceived aspect of injustice, I disagree because of his ability to practice the law of common sense. Take Derek Chauvin, for instance. What the world's seen versus what I seen. The world's seen an injustice happen. What I seen was disobedience and a right to take a life. Why? The last thing that society should want to see or have done is the permittance of discord and disobedience to the law. The law is supreme. If I were placed in the same perspective, if I experienced what George Floyd, if I was in the position of George Floyd, let's say, and Derek Chauvin, the officer, had put handcuffs on me, and I refused to get in the back of the vehicle, my expectation would be that I would die. That would be my expectation. Why? Because disobedience. And though people in the world don't understand, or maybe they don't comprehend, what do I mean by it was acceptable? It should have been taught. Yes. Why? He wasn't doing anything. Yes, he did. He did do something. He did something that was illegal and unlawful. You get in the back of the vehicle and you proceed with the protocol. There's a system in place for a reason. And as someone who has experienced being arrested many times, I'm here today because being obedient can keep you breathing. Sometimes we go through things that are unfair, and I would say minorities experiencing some type of injustice simply is not true. Perhaps the only one who would be experiencing an injustice likely would be the minority female or a child. But as far as the male, no. Anytime that a minority male claims that he's experiencing police brutality, he's experiencing some type of injustice, it is insulting to me. And there's no way that people should be okay with protecting the very people who oppress me or do the gatekeeping. If it is that I am here based upon someone's inability to be a decent human being and feels entitled to not only rape, feels entitled to murder, feels entitled to physically assault, feels entitled to degrade, humiliate, feels entitled to falsely impersonate a characterization of someone they simply are not, is a false prophet misleading their church and the followers of it, and is perpetuating child abuse and all sorts of other violations and criminal violations. The last thing that I would desire from society would be to side with and to enable this level of dysfunction that is happening in an abundance, whereas minority males have done several violations across the board. One of them being the exploitation of their alleged sisters, failing to value their families, failing to even be able to construct a healthy, functioning family, having several children outside of wedlock, as well as having several children with different mothers, failing to be financially supportive to the children they create, avoiding, ignoring, and refusing to provide a safe environment, a safe familial home, protections for daughters, failing to teach their sons how to be men, and instead teaching them how to be victims, all the while disparaging the females, whereas us minority females are subjected to basically being men and women and children as adults and being held accountable for what our failures of males in this demographic have been so persistent with not being able to achieve. They have not been able to produce, maintain, admit, acknowledge, confront, or disassemble, dismantle male entitlement. They have made professional victims collaterals, dysfunctioned, broken families, and codependency not just upon the females of the demographic, but also codependency upon the institution, government. So what do I have to say about that? Obviously, I would want to be with a man that I'm attracted to. I've never been attracted to minority males. I've been subjugated to tolerating them through abuse. You could even say through desperation. And the desperation having nothing to do with a natural desperation, but an artificially created desperation. Where there's so many players, gatekeepers, who play many different acts and characters. You have some who do all this theft, destroying of property, infiltrating the places of employment, watching, spying. They take no shortcuts when it comes to sabotaging an ability to escape. They take everything a step further by going to those who we could seek out for counsel or advice, and they fill their heads, those who would possibly help us, with lies, fabricated stories. They file police reports. They hurry up and try and get us engaged with the criminal justice system so that it paves the way to make it easier to gatekeep us. The solution for me, I've always found law enforcement officers to be attractive. I've never been attracted to minority males. I think that would be my solution, a perfect solution. I'd feel safe for once. The only thing is that they're always so busy. When I ask, or if I go up to one, I'm like, damn, you're pretty fucking hot. He's busy, or he's married. I would definitely love to be married to an officer. I'd sleep easy at night. I wish that there was like a chair on top of like a squad car, and I'd just sit on the chair on top of it. I've never experienced this falsely narrated racism that minorities speak of. I've never witnessed law enforcement being racist to minority people. No. They do not profile them. No, they don't. Nor do they just go around murdering them. This is a lie. 99.9% of the time. When minorities finally are encountered or are approached by law enforcement, so many violations have occurred. A long list of things have occurred. So, no. Also, 99.9% of the time when I have to call the police, it's because of minorities. 99.9% of the time when I have to call 911 or I'm experiencing some type of adversity or violence or tragedy, it's coming from minority people. both male and female. Anyways, my whole life basically has been reduced to perpetual abuse. I would love to be able to see myself on the other side of all of this. It would be impossible to do with a minority. On top of that, I don't believe that it's even that it's even possible to do it with anyone else. Not only am I not attracted to them, I just don't see this as plausible. Now, I don't go out of my way to be hateful or disparage minority people, but they've gone out of their way to disparage me, destroy anything that I've worked on, dismantle everything that I've attempted to do. No white people have ever done that. And I could name off many things, but I really don't want to go down that list. Let's just say that basically at every turn and event of my life, and it has always been minority people or females that are in authoritative positions or are adults that were exploiting me in my adolescence. It needs to stop. I want them to go somewhere. My happiness should be more valuable than... My happiness should not only just be more valuable, it should be law. 31 years of perpetual hell. And feeding people, providing people that I did not, nor am I obligated to take care of or to be loyal to. I do not subject myself or tolerate abuse. And when I'm being abused, it makes no difference and it has no relevance what creed or color or gender or pigment of anyone's skin is. I don't care. Furthermore, I do not appreciate being confined to a box, whereas I show up like this and I'm supposed to be black. I'm not black. Because if I'm black, then I'm also white. And we're not going to play this game. I'm not going to play a game with anybody. If you're going to want to represent the criminal part of me, because I'm only black because of a criminal conduct. Criminal misconduct was perpetuated and it was never prosecuted. So sure, I'm here because crime. I'm only black by criminal misconduct. Otherwise, would you like to call me German? Because you're not going to continue to disgrace me because of how I show up as an identity. Not only did I not ask to be here, if the law had been abided by, I wouldn't be here. If this was really a Kojic minister who was a representative of and for God, I wouldn't be here. Not this way. He wouldn't have been an abuser trying to murder my grandfather's daughter. If these males were actually men, I would not have been trafficked. I would not have bore a child out of rape. I would not have had it to where female judges, social workers, attorneys, prosecutors, sergeants would be so deviant and corrupt to abuse their positions to give my baby away to somebody who I was not only not married to, somebody who by legal definition, couldn't be the father in any scenario. There was no DNA paternity test done. It was actually denied when I motioned for it. There was no due process of which would even validate or make legitimate how my daughter was given to a stranger who, if he had abided by the law, would not even have possession of a child who he should not have possession of, all the while abusing her, neglecting her. My daughter has disclosed the abuse. Nothing was done. She's left with a trafficker who had to disobey the law after being deported in 2006 by the U.S. and turned right back around and came back into the U.S. to defile my body and rape me. Now, if there had not been this gatekeeping being done, this never would have happened. If there had not been this allowing of something that should have never been allowed to begin with. According to me, I have no idea why white men tolerate this. I have no idea, because they have extreme patience. They have godly patience, I would say. It's not even of this world. It makes no sense to me. Why do they tolerate it? Is the society, because they condition us in society to feel bad about our looks, like there's something wrong with us minorities, like nobody could possibly love us. Minority males play a game of white men don't like you. They'll never believe you. Nobody cares. And in some ways, it could seem that way, and it might even appear that way. However, there's been occasions where it simply just wasn't true. And the only reason why I'm not with those men now is because of the gatekeeping and because of the violence that's perpetuated, unreported. The mainstream media does not cover it. I've witnessed white men on my behalf be physically assaulted. I've had it to where white men have had to put up with fighting pimps and keeping them from kidnapping me. I mean, this man has went above and beyond trying to protect me and trying to love me, and everybody else has been trying to keep me in a state of misery, or feeling like woe is me, or feeling like nobody loves me, nobody's gonna help me. And you know what? Regardless of the outcome of things, I'm just gonna say this. It's amazing how far people are willing to go with being absolutely disgusting and unnecessary. Meaning that realistically, and this is not to say that white men should be the only men here, but if other males are going to be here, or other men, minority men are going to be here, I find it very difficult and almost impossible to believe that it's that hard to respect the only man that I find to be worthy of me or anybody. Why should white men be physically assaulted, have his taxes taken from him, me be kept from him and gatekept in these communities that evidently hate me and have a hard time respecting me? The white man has never went out of his way to be evil to me, but everybody else has. Females have. Minority males have been raping me my entire life, stealing from me my entire life, trafficking me my entire life, and I suppose trying to do the same to my daughter. All of these human sacrifices, child sacrifices, are just fucking disgusting to me. It bothers me that I've had to go through so much hell just to be with the only man that I want. And nobody bats an eye. Nobody reports or covers what the hell is going on seriously in this planet. Instead, what we see time and time again is false narratives and fake news, like Trump had said. It is fake news. Like I said, minority males are not profiled. No, they're not. He's not being targeted or murdered by the police. They do not get enough credit in this planet, and quite frankly, to be an officer on this planet is deadly. They don't even cover that. How many officers are fucking murdered here? How many officers and how many white men have been murdered on the behalf of minorities? I mean, everything from trying to stop chattel slavery and trying to stop Africans from selling us. Republican white men had to take up arms and went to war against Africa. Black males didn't do that. The things that are not spoken about in history that deserve to be mentioned and spoken about is they fail to mention that white people were the first slaves here in the United States of America. How they're still enslaved to this day. The main trade. The whole thing is that they're the main ones being traded and sold into slavery. Most don't know it. Traffickers don't have discrimination towards what color gets to be enslaved. We're all being enslaved. And we're all experiencing injustices on behalf of an inferior class of creature. I love women. Women are superior, but not females. Females have a strange way of being. Females have a sense of entitlement to ruin and destroy people's lives and make everybody miserable. Doesn't matter if it's a child. Doesn't matter if it's her so-called spouse. Doesn't matter. She enjoys making and bending rules, making others miserable. She has a disdain for her own children. She's jealous of her own daughters. And she likes to be the, I suppose, ruler over men. Men don't need rulers, as a matter of fact. I don't believe that men should be ruled over. And if anyone's to do any ruling, it should be me. I like men in charge because it's the only time that things get done in this planet. Yeah, if I could snap my finger and anything would happen, I would have a sexy officer or two as a husband. And he would adopt my baby and get her away from that motherfucker who felt entitled to not just rape me, but also rape Veronica Vasquez, who was a mere 14-year-old middle school aged girl. He abandoned her with 2 children. He couldn't even send $5 a month to Mexico for her to raise his kids that he had to rape her to have. He was well over college age, so 30s, and raped a 14-year-old and left her with 2 children in Mexico. He's not an asylee. He's a fucking criminal predator who preys on young, beautiful minority females because we've been kept in these confines of this plantation, whereas rather than us being law-abiding, being able to maintain our employment and our stability and being free from being trafficked, abused, raped, molested, going through incest and going through this fake thing where you have false leaders who are false prophets, who are abusers. We're not allowed to do that, but we're allowed to be sold to people that we don't even want to touch. We're allowed to be reduced and diminished to being classified as basket cases and crazy and tinfoil hats and all that. And any type of healthy relationship that we have, gee by golly, because, even though we're mixed race, we show up like this, and that means that we're black. No, I'm here and I'm black because of crime. I'm here because of crime. And if I'm black, then you're also going to accept that I'm white too. And there's no race that you're going to separate me from. I am human race, or I'll be alien. I don't care what you need to call me. But there's nobody who I should be subjected to being with, especially if I don't want to be with them. So you're going to have to accept my white side as well. Because you're not going to separate what I consist of, and I consist of everything. So that's power. And I'm going to say that yes, it's if it's the last thing, that I would prefer that people just be held accountable for what they've done. People need to be responsible for the hell that they cause. Stop blaming men for every damn thing in this planet. Obviously, there's a clear distinction between who is man and who simply is not. And I can assure you that men are not the problem. They're not. And if my words mean anything, if they do, if they have any power, I would say this. May the men live for a very long time, because God knows that we need men. I do. I don't know about you, but I do. See, people say, no, you don't need anybody. You just need yourself. Absolutely not. This is a lie. I need men, so I don't care what anybody has to say. I wouldn't be here if it were not for men. I'm very grateful towards men, because if it had not been for men, I wouldn't be able to say these things. I would probably be hung somewhere or set on fire for having the audacity to say these things. Had it not been for the many men, especially the Italians and those officers, the sexy ones that I wanted. And I'm very upset about how that's brushed over in history. Historically speaking, nobody brings it up, nobody mentions it. Everybody wants to go with this trajectory, the poor victimology of minority males. There is no victim. If white men supposedly were being so evil to a minority people, it's because of what the minority people and their ancestors have been doing to me for centuries. And the only men or group of people who had the decency, the dignity, the wherewithal, and sacrificed their own fucking lives, they were the only ones who were willing to do something about it. And they're not here anymore. And they should be here. I don't like it. It bothers me. It hurts me and it offends me that people would prefer to keep the life of somebody who hates me, rapes me, takes me for granted, and tries to break me and gatekeep me, rather than being upset towards those who I want to fuck. Okay? Now, if we can't get to a place where some intelligence and truth is the king and ruler over everything, what's the point of being here? What is the point of being in this existence at all? Are we that inferior as a collective that we seriously can't live in the truth and speak the truth? That the truth is the target and the scapegoat rather than the problem? The problem should be the target at all times. The liar should always be the one who's scapegoated. And rather than demanding justice and giving millions away because of somebody's disobedience is unacceptable. I don't like what you guys did for Derek Chauvin. You're calling him a murderer? Every 4 hours, minority females are being murdered. Get in the back seat and go to your destination. so that you can keep breathing. I can assure you, I've said many things to officers, and even though I may have been being a bitch sometimes, but they never mistreated me or disrespected me. They just were like, click, click, and go. I suppose it's somewhat of a fantasy. Like, can you just handcuff me and take me to your home? Don't leave me here. Just take me to where, and then can you pick the baby up too? I don't like this place because of the hate that is given towards those who I respect the most. I don't like how the officers are treated. I don't like how they're blamed. I don't like how white men are treated. I don't like how they're blamed. And everyone else, wherever they are in the spectrum of, if they're on the side of what I'm talking about, or if they're on the other side saying, you fuck the police, and you know, you're a cracker, and you're racist, and you're blah, blah, blah. I assure you that I would be more tolerant of a racist Klan member, and I promise you, my livelihood is going to be more of a quality standard of living than it is going to be amongst my so-called brethren over here. Brethren. I promise you. Now, one last thing. If you were brought here by a bunch of slave owners, you're a white person brought over here by slave owner, so a master, and me, as well as others who were sold into slavery. We overpower or somehow get it to be to where we can graduate out of being slaves. Do you think that I have to like you? You brought me and others like me over here, okay, as property. I'm supposed to like you? Me and my children, my offspring, my people are supposed to like you after you've enslaved me? Why would I need to like you? Why should I be enforced to like you, give you money, be nice to you, and allow you to be lawless? I'm profiling you? How am I profiling you? Is that not what I'm entitled to do? If I am entrusted with keeping everybody's life safer, to protect and to serve, shouldn't I be profiling anybody? So, if you want to be treated like a little baby, then go to a, I don't know, daycare and go sign up for services there. Nobody in the law enforcement is obligated to be nice to anybody. It is their job to profile, and it is their job to throw handcuffs on people when they're being unlawful. And as far as I'm concerned, like I've said many a time, they're not paid enough. No, they're not. They're murdered by folks in the society who are disgusting. They're not worthy of murdering them. No officer has went out of their way to piss me off, except for maybe the one female officer. It's an occasional female officer, but that was, in one occasion when I was a teenager, I was put in a headlock by like this blonde dyke, bull dyke, like she was just ridiculous. Put me in a headlock. Another time was more recently, in 2019, when I was falsely arrested after the criminal immigrant who raped me, mind you, filed a false police report and said that I kidnapped my own daughter. Mind you, product of rape, trafficked, no DNA paternity test to establish whether he actually was the parent. He does not have a social security number, so he should not be on a birth certificate. And if he is on a birth certificate, that's a forged and fraud document. My expectations is that somebody gets this video or sees this video or recognizes and investigates what the hell I'm talking about. Whoever, if God willing, if God is good to me, my husband is going to sue all of your asses and you're going to regret what the fuck you did to my life. And this racist bullshit needs to come to a close, because this gravy train that's being poured out for a bunch of ingrates who have been nothing but evil to me needs to stop. Nobody's entitled to a handout simply because of the pigments of your skin or because you have a dick. I don't care. You guys have been evil to me. You trafficked me my whole life. And I'm done with coddling in this whole thing where everybody has to watch their words because of sensitivity. Well, where's the sensitivity? My body. My grandfather's daughter's body. Trafficking us and being able to traffic us through the misuse and abuse and fraudulent use of the system, like the family court. Just all over the place. And I can't tell you how many times that these officers have been lenient on you demonic minority males. They've been lenient, nice, and have allowed you to go, allowed you to rape me. I'm a beautiful woman, okay? Yeah, my hair's crazy. It is. I don't care. My hair's like this because a woman was raped. Nobody was prosecuted. I was raped. He wasn't prosecuted. As a matter of fact, where he's from, nobody was prosecuted. So my husband should be able to sue Mexico as well. I don't like you white men being nice to people who don't have, if we can call them people. I don't like you being nice to people who don't deserve for you to be nice to them. I think that you guys are far too patient, and I don't like people trying to take claim of me like I belong or I'm subjected to being one thing. No, like I said, there's German and part crime. I'm black only by design and use of crime, and that's it. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with how I look or my ethnicity. Are you kidding me? I don't care. I have nothing against my ethnicity or my race. I have something against those who gatekeep and feel entitled to disrespect, pimp, and profit off of my existence. It's unforgivable. So, dear husband, hey white man, make sure you sue the shit out of everyone who disrespected your wife, me, okay? All right. Do something about it and stop letting this happen.